Welcome back to the Daughters of the Moon podcast. We're grateful that you can join us for another week. And Mama and I are super excited. Today we have Devon Heyn on with us, and she is an astrologer and life coach who blends astrology's wisdom with coaching's clarity to help people remember who they are and live with purpose. Through her signature approach, where astrology acts as the compass and coaching as the catalyst, she helps those feel lost, stuck, or at crossroads gain clear, empowering guidance to move forward with confidence. Known for her radiant cheerleader like energy, Devon infuses every conversation with encouragement and joy, leaving clients with a pep in their step and a renewed belief in themselves.
Cute, I like it.
And you can learn more on her website, devonrochelle.com, and we'll put all of that in the show notes. So, welcome, Devon. We're super excited to have you on with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I also have to say, having someone read your bio as the entrance, I feel like I just came in with my own theme song or something. I feel like that was the perfect way to enter the scene. So thank you for having me. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here, truly.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So, can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and how you kind of got on your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. As with, I'm sure, all of your guests, it's a long story, but I will condense it. So I'll start with what I do now professionally, which you had mentioned, of course, in the bio, which is that I am an astrologer, but I also am a life coach. And so I blend the two. I don't do astrology sessions over here, life coaching sessions over here. I think they're one and the same. So I kind of call it astro coaching. And it's this beautiful blend of modalities because the astrology gives you, quite honestly, this objective guidance. Who are you? Who did you come here to be? What career paths are objectively aligned for you? What are your strengths? What are your challenges, etc.? And then the coaching piece is the very human piece of how can I hold your hand? Or what I really love doing in sessions is let's say we discover a struggle, a challenge in someone's chart, their birth chart. I can then kind of open the door and go really deep with them. So tell me about how that has shown up for you, and why do you think that's a pattern that's repeating in your relationships? And so a lot of my clients leave and they say, I didn't know astrology would feel like therapy, but it did. But also, the coaching piece is that they leave with 10 new practical next steps. So I've always been a fan of, astrology and psychic abilities and mediumship and all the things, but my one complaint sometimes with my sessions that I've received, and they've all been magical, but you leave the session, I'm sure you guys can attest to this, you leave the session sometimes, you feel on fire, you feel so inspired, so lit up, and then a week goes by and you're back to normal life. And so I thought in my practice, I want to give people that spark, that inspiration, that realignment of who they are, who they came here to be. But I want them to walk out the door with an instruction manual, with a game plan. So, what comes next? So, that's a little bit about kind of what I do. But the journey to get here has been a long and winding and very fun road. So, funny enough, I was just kind of mentioning this to you two before we started recording, but I was essentially introduced to the whole world of spirituality from my husband long before he was my husband. So we met the very first day of university on move-in day. We were living in the same dorm. We both went to the Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio. He's from Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm a California girl. I came from across the country from San Francisco. So, first of all, the odds that I went to Ohio State, found who I very much believe to be my soulmate. It's already pretty spiritual, pretty mystical to me. But when we first met, we became really, really good friends. And I still remember one of our first hangouts ever. I asked him what his summer plans were. And he said, actually, I'm thinking about becoming a yoga teacher. I want to do this yoga teacher training. And here's the funny thing. Even though I was the California girl from San Francisco, I looked at him thinking, this is the hippiest boy I've ever met because I did not really grow up with the yoga, the breath work, the spirituality in that form. And so I thought he was just a little kooky, but I liked him too. So I was curious. I asked questions. Long story short, 3 years go by. And in that time, we are completely best friends, attached at the hip, but completely platonic. And I woke up one day and I realized, holy beep, I'm in love with my best friend. What am I going to do about this? And he at the time was actually on a bit of a spiritual seeking journey. And he was kind of pulling back from the friendship. He was self isolating a little. He was asking the big questions of who am I? Why am I here? And he was really deep on that path. And so, through a series of events, we ended up kind of becoming estranged. And long story short, I pretty much had my heart broken by this man who is now my husband. Very confusing. And in that time where I was in deep emotional pain, I started looking for answers, as we do. And so I turned to astrology. And specifically, I wanted to know, so are we not compatible? Was I wrong about this all along? So I started doing research on his sign, my sign, and through all of the Google searches, I found out, oh, oh no, we're really compatible. And it made it more painful. So what started as a compatibility search of hoping and praying that we were never meant to be together anymore or at all, I found out, oh, we're absolutely compatible. But through that search, I really found astrology because, as I had just alluded to, I was researching, oh, so I'm a Leo, he's a Gemini. What does that mean for compatibility, Leo and Gemini? And in that rabbit hole is where I found out, oh, we have an entire birth chart. I'm not just a Leo. There are other planets. I have other zodiac signs. And I still remember the day I was sitting on my apartment floor in college and I learned about my moon sign, which is Aquarius. And I had never felt so seen or understood in my life. And so it's funny how it all started from, of course, this place of heartbreak. That tends to be the story for many spiritual seekers, where you start looking for answers in times of pain. But it led me to this magical realization that would forever change my life. And then, long story short, after college, I ended up using a lot of my love of psychology, which is what I had studied. I did love spirituality. I just really with people and helping them reach for their potential. So I worked as a health and wellness coach for many years, a breathwork facilitator, a yoga teacher. I ended up becoming one. So inspired by him. And so I've years and yet one thing missing. Even though I still loved astrology throughout that time, I had kind of, fallen off the bandwagon after he and I had healed our heartbreak and we ended up dating and then getting married. And throughout all of my work as a life coach, a wellness coach, a yoga teacher, a breathwork facilitator, I realized a theme, which was that I had so many clients who came to me feeling lost in life. They felt directionless. Who am I? What's meant for me? And even though I think coaching is one of the most powerful techniques in the world, I truly do, there are times when you're simply too lost. I really believe that. There are times when you need a stranger full of love and humility to just look you in the eyes and remind you of how freaking magical you are and why you're here and what you're meant for and why we need you. And in those moments, you can see the spark return to someone's eyes. So, anyway, I'll pause here because I know that was a long and winding story, but
That's
that's a
okay.
little about me.
That's amazing. And I think that's great. And I love how you combine the two modalities together because I think, when you start looking at things like astrology and human design and a lot of those different things where you're finding out who your core being is, and then
Yes.
work with that. I love that because I would assume that with life coaching, once you know who somebody's is and what their birth chart is,
Yeah.
you would coach them differently depending on, right?
Mm.
Because we all have
Yes.
things that are us, right? Like I'm a
Yes.
Capricorn, so yes, I am very grounded, but I'm also very controlling. So
Yes.
so
Hey, I
I
get
would be different
it.
coaching than say my mom who's a Virgo, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's amazing that you do that. So is that what you do then is pull the birth chart for the person before you start working with them?
Oh, absolutely. When someone signs up for me, of course, they get a long booking form with, birth date and birth time, all of that. But then I ask, what is happening in your life right now that has spurred you to seek clarity? What is the intention? What are you hoping to gain clarity on? And once I get that information, I pull up their birth chart and I study it for hours, hours and hours and hours. And the first imprint that I get from the birth chart becomes often the through line for the session. So there's kind of this intuitive moment, and then I dig really deep and I leave no stone unturned. And then we get to the session, and as I said, it is beautiful. It's life coaching, it's therapy, it's spiritual guidance, it's cosmic cheerleading, it's all of the things. And it's also funny. I just want to say one thing along the lines of what you were saying, that you're a Capricorn, your mom's a Virgo, that I would coach you each differently. And this is very true. And one of the things my first astrology teacher years ago ever said is when you first get on a call, obviously you've looked at their birth chart, but I want you to study them to notice what their elemental breakdown is. Because, of course, we have the four elements: fire, earth, air, and water. And just from that simple starting point, I mean, we haven't even gotten into the signs or the planets yet, but starting with, oh, I can sense this person has a lot of earth, but they're not talking much. They might be lacking air. And so you can do things to not only, support the element that they're strong in, but also to nurture what might be lacking. Because if you see the four elements as the four tires on a car, if one of them is flat, your car isn't balanced. We live out of balance.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of a little fun fact as well, that you can just use something as foundational as the four elements to really connect with someone and see, do they need me to speak in feeling terms? Do they need me to speak in practical terms? What does this person need from me?
I remember when I first looked at horoscope many, many years ago now, and I wanted to find out about me. So I went in and started reading my horoscope and the planets and everything. And then it's picked out what I didn't like, what it said. You know,
Of course, Virgo. Of course you didn't like it.
and then going, okay, I got to change that. I don't want to be that part of that Virgo thing. And I don't like this, so I'm going to change that because I'm not commenting on that Virgo part of me either. I don't like it. And so it was really interesting because the more I looked into the stars about me, now I'm on my only, I think I was probably 18 at the time, maybe 19.
Wow.
And I'm going, holy shit, I don't want to be like that. And I'm going to change
Yes.
that now, right? And it's
Yeah.
interesting because I've really tried to follow it through over the years, so I didn't become
Yeah.
that critical person and that kind of thing that a Virgo can do, right? Try to see the goodness in people first instead of trying to pick up the critical side of them first. And it's worked for me really nicely. But also
Yeah.
it works with my readings because if people open up to me and I try to get into them a little bit about tell me about you or whatever the case may be, then it helps me too to, like you were saying, to help to mentor them in the position where you feel that it would help them out, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I like what you do. I like what you say there, and you are so light with what you say. Like you have a very good energy, so that must come across
Thank
really nice to
you.
your clients.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I also have to say about what you were mentioning, the Virgo, the critical piece, you didn't want to be like that. You want to see the good in people. What's beautiful, I think, is two things, just when it comes to that point, is that one, because astrology has this magical element that a stranger is looking you in the eyes and somehow they're telling you eerily accurate information about yourself, that I've had really funny scenarios with clients where, for example, I might look at their chart and zooming into one planet, I might say, "You're a little controlling, aren't you?" And the way they light up, they're like, "Yes, I'm so controlling."
I don't mean to be though.
Just like you, Capricorn.
Right?
So it's funny that sometimes seeing even your challenges or even the shadow sides, the flaws, when a stranger tells you, "Oh, you're judgmental. Oh, you're critical," there is still a piece of, wow, and that's magical. You see me? So that's one piece. But the other is that, of course, every shadow has its strength and vice versa. So
Right.
even for Virgos, yes, the critical piece, the judgmental, but you are also the king of editing, of improving, of, enhancing our efficiency because you notice every flaw, every error, every mistake,
Yeah.
every typo.
Yeah.
So we need that in the world as well. So I just think, yeah, if I haven't, run home my point, I think astrology is a magical gift.
It
Yeah.
truly is. It truly is. It's
Yeah.
fun to read about yourself that way too. When someone's
Yeah.
done your reading with the stars, it's like, wow, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Oh, wow, really? You know?
Exactly. Yes, I'm so controlling.
Well, and
Exactly.
sometimes then you can find the power in that too, though, right? Because then
Yeah.
you can honor that part about yourself. Like now it's a running joke when we go anywhere with the family. My son's girlfriend's like, and I suspect that you'll want to drive. I'm like, yes, I do. Which is her nice way of potentially saying I'm controlling, but I get that about my personality. And so I try to
Yeah.
use it as an advantage as opposed to a
Yeah.
disadvantage for myself.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know,
And I'm so glad you're bringing up the point about relationships and family dynamics, that when we actually know our own birth chart, who we are, and we look at the birth chart, know the tendencies of our family members and friends, I think it only enhances the relationship. I was actually just telling someone the other day that there is someone in my life who I love dearly, but we both have always been aware that this person can be a bit of an asshole, to put it lightly. And I mention that because what's funny is when I first saw this person's chart, my first thought was, "Oh, they were built to be an asshole." And now, granted, I will caveat this by saying I believe just as much in our ability to choose. We do have free will within the fate. So even though this person has certain tendencies of impatience, impulsivity, being sharp tongued, okay, these are things that can be worked on. It's still a choice. So I won't, disregard that. But it's also brought me such compassion. Like, let's say you were my mom, and I thought growing up, wow, she's so critical. But once I had seen that Virgo and the rest of your birth chart, I might think, oh, she's being herself and she actually loves me dearly. She cares, which is why she's being critical. And so in so many ways, even seeing the shadow sides, like you need to drive because you're controlling, there's so much compassion in it, and honestly a little comedy too, of like me looking at that chart and saying, "Oh, built to be an asshole, I get it." So it's really just opened my eyes and made me less judgmental of other people because I recognize each person was just built differently, and that's okay.
yeah. And the more that we can understand them, I think is a good thing. We did a big thing at work not too long ago, and it was a colors thing. So they put us into the four different colors. And then it was
Mm.
interesting because you learn a little bit about that person. And some people were like, oh, I totally wouldn't have pegged you as that color, right? And it was just interesting because it was about like how do we work with people that are different than us and show up differently to life. That doesn't make anybody wrong or bad. It just makes us who we are, right? And I think with astrology,
Yeah.
it's the same thing, is this is who we are, and we can embrace these things and learn from them about ourselves, or we can just use it as a cop out.
It was really
Yes.
it was really interesting too, because I went and had lunch with Kimmy one day at work, and they had done the color thing, I guess, weeks before that. But we were sitting there and they're talking to each other, and during the conversation, every now and then they brought up, "I didn't know you were going to be that color," you know. And so they were still embracing on that in conversation. So it was really interesting as an outsider to sit there and listen, because they
Yeah.
were still finding out about each other, and this is weeks after, right?
Yeah.
In conversation was pretty cool,
Absolutely.
actually. It was pretty cool.
Absolutely. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this because you went through this color game. But sometimes when we are exposed to other people, that they know our color or they know something about our birth chart, I actually think there's something quite empowering and prideful about that experience of, yes, I am a yellow, or I don't know what the colors are.
Yeah.
Did you feel that way?
Yeah, it was interesting because blues are very emotional people. And so if you
Okay.
are anywhere spiritual, you
You're
have a
blue.
tendency to be a higher blue, right?
Okay.
Greens are more analytical, golds are more organized, and oranges are very
Mm,
impulsive people. So I'd be
okay.
curious, actually, it would have been interesting to know if you had actually thought about it, to just find out what some of these different signs were and if
Yeah,
they kind of related into the different elements. I would be really interested to know that.
absolutely. I'm sure they did. I'm absolutely sure they did. I mean, even just hearing the blue being the spiritual, the emotional, that's water,
Yeah.
obviously to me. And then I forget the other ones you said. I can't keep track of them, but there's got to be some overlap there.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm thinking so. So I just, I didn't get that chance to, I didn't think of it right then, darn it.
Yes. It's
But
always after the fact.
right? But it is so eye-opening when you find those things, because it does give you some vulnerability to look at your coworker in a different way and be like,
Yeah.
oh, that's why they don't like to engage in long conversations, because it's not that they don't care about me. It's just that this is the way,
They're not like that.
this is how they are. They're
Yeah.
focused, or
Yes.
yeah.
Well, I'll give you a funny example of that. So my mom and my dad, they're still married. They're still very happy. It's been at least 35 years married. They've always been wonderful role models for me when it comes to love. But there's one thing that has always been like one of their sticking points, which is that when my dad comes home from work, my mom wants to tell him all the things and all of the colorful stories and this nuance and that detail. And he'll always say, Elise, the bullet points. And she hears that as he's uninterested in what I have to say. And what he means is, I'm overwhelmed. I'm tired. I want to hear, but I just need the simple facts, woman. And when I first looked at their birth charts, I thought, wow, it all makes sense. And I'll tell you exactly what I saw just related to this piece. So in astrology, the planet of Mercury rules the mind. It is the way that we think, the way that we communicate, the way that we learn, the way that we write, etc. My dad has Mercury in Taurus. It is grounded, it is facts oriented, it is stable, it wants to keep things really simple, honestly. So even when he gives speeches at work, he has kind of this, it's always in three bullet points and it's very clear. My mom has her Mercury in Scorpio, and Taurus and Scorpio are opposite sides of the polarity. They're opposite signs. And where Taurus wants the simple and the stable, Scorpio goes really deep. And it keeps going deep until it's gotten all of the answers. It's the mind of a detective, of a surgeon, and she's a lawyer. And so, she's probing him with questions or trying to unload all the facts. And he's like, keep it simple, keep it simple, keep it simple. So there's just one example where, once again, you can see the beauty in we're built different, and that's okay. But you can also learn to love the other person better. that, oh, when my wife, quote unquote, probes me with questions, she's curious because she loves me. She's not trying to interrogate me. It's her Scorpio Mercury. And then same with my dad that, wow, sometimes his mind just needs to keep it simple. He's a little sleepy from the day. So it's really, I think, a beautiful way to love one another better and also just to have more compassion for one another.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I can definitely see how that would relate into life coaching because let's just say I come to you and I'm like, oh, my husband and I don't understand him. And then you look at my
Yes.
birth chart, you look at his, and then you're like, well,
Yeah.
here's some things that you need to work on and how you can work around it or be compassionate, like you said, for each other to make it through those hard times, right? Because I think
Yes.
sometimes we have hard times in life and we give up before we actually get to where we're going to be
Yeah.
because
Yes.
there's these obstacles and we don't have the compassion to deal with them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And also the point that you just bring up of, we give up before we technically should. I'm glad you bring up kind of the timing piece that's big in astrology. We've been talking so far about the personality dynamics when you look at a birth chart, but the other half of astrology is prediction. It is looking at the evolution of your evolvement. It is the timing of your life.
Yeah.
And it's all laid out beautifully before you're born. Now, of course, this brings up a lot of questions around
Yeah.
fate and free will, and it can be kind of freaky when you look too deep into it. But there's also something beautiful about um, seeing that the path you're on right now, yes, it's aligned. And if it doesn't happen,
Yeah, right.
been struggling kind of in her career path for a while and saw that her career is a slow burn. It takes some time. And in fact, around her Saturn return, around 29, 30 years old, things will lock into place, but not a second before. Now, it doesn't mean that she's wasting her time up till then because all the skills and the strengths she's learning will be part of her career. But I just think it's really beautiful to see you're not behind. You're right on time. We're all going through numerous cycles at the same time. Sometimes we're in healing years, sometimes we're in hustling years, sometimes we're in resting years. And there's a time and a place for everything, just not all at once.
Yeah, and I love that message because that's something that like some my stepdaughters sometimes say, "Oh, I just feel like I'm this years old and I should be at a different spot." I'm like, "You're where you're supposed to be." Like
Yes.
whatever, I mean, not that we can't change and move forward, but you can't be so hard on yourself as you're trying to achieve the things that you're trying
Yeah,
to
because you're still
achieve.
young, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, especially in today's day and age where we have social media and you are exposed to everyone's highlight reels and milestone moments every day,
Yeah.
that there's no possibility that you can't see that every day and think, oh, and I'm doing just as well. We all think, I'm behind or what's wrong with me? Why am I so slow? Why am I not there yet? And then when you look at someone's birth chart and look at the unfolding of their life's timeline, oh, actually, you are right on time and you're doing a great. You're built different from them because that person has this ability and you have this special ability. Lean into that one. So it feels like it gives people permission to be themselves and to just live life on their own timing.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I would agree with
Yeah.
that.
That's where we get confused in this lifetime sometimes. It's our own timing. It,
Yeah.
and we have to be reminded of that sometimes too. We're not all made the same.
Yes. Exactly, exactly. And I think the more birth charts you look at, the more you see that and that it's all meant to be. I mean, this is kind of a funny aside, but it's related. I posted a video the other day telling everyone that they're wrong about Geminis because Geminis and Scorpios tend to be the two most let's just say misunderstood signs. People people don't always love those energies. And so I started by making a video about Geminis and said, you're wrong about Geminis. And I explained all of the shadow sides that people talk about with Geminis, and I flipped it. And I said, but have you thought about these incredible gifts? And hey, 95% likely that they are far more curious and quick-witted than you will ever be. Maybe you're just not keeping up. And of course, I was teasing the whole time. But the point of that, oh, what was the question? What was my point of this Gemini video? Oh, I love when that happens.
So she said, oh, when you were talking about
Oh,
your thing. Okay.
we're all built different as well.
Yes.
And that there are certain energies, certain signs that we actually might struggle more with because in our birth chart, there are actually a few things I can see in a birth chart that typically shows me when a certain energy is hard for that person to be around or to kind of integrate. And when I posted this video, I guess this was my point about everyone's made differently. This was a video where I was meant to be sharing love and light. And I was saying, hey, you're wrong about Geminis. They're lovable too. The amount of hateful comments I got on that video, people saying, oh my gosh, but behind closed doors, Geminis are the worst. And I just kept thinking, I wish these people could all be
Astrologers.
Speak to the people who own those charts because they will see every energy is needed in this world. Every single one. Even if you go back to that example I was giving with my parents, the Taurus and the Scorpio Mercury, that if you think about Taurus energy in general, it's very grounded. It's very stable. It's very even keeled. And so that is a lovely energy. However, it's unafraid. And you have its opposite, Scorpio, which goes deep. It's intense. And so it's unafraid of kind of doing the dark shadow work. But sometimes it gets stuck in its emotions. Sometimes it goes too deep and it can't get itself back out. And so Taurus teaches Scorpio, sometimes life is just about the simple pleasures. You're okay. And Scorpio teaches Taurus, change, dig a little deeper, like do something. And so that's just one example. But my point, I think, in bringing up the Gemini video is just that I had responded to one of those comments saying that every zodiac sign is so needed in this world. If we removed one of them, we would lose out on so much magic. So I suppose that was my point.
Yeah, it is. I think too, it would be really interesting if parents, when they have children, they learned about their zodiac signs when they're children, when they're small, so they'd have a better definition of how to raise them. I really like when Kimmy was young. I realized when she was young, she was determined she was going to do some things. There was no sense of arguing with her because she was going to do them anyway. I mean, I could deter her on her decisions of how she wanted to do things, but or try. But at the same time,
and I bet you did as a Virgo.
So with her, it was like, okay, she'd have these ideas and she'd want to try them out. Okay, let her try them because then she's going to get her own answers, right? And her brother, he's a Pisces, so hyperactive. He's a swimmer, I tell you. So different personality. Where I learned with him, you have to put your rule down because they have to be guided.
Yes.
And so, but if every parent would listen to the zodiac signs when they're little, because I was into them too, right? And
yes.
So I think it gives you a better idea of how your kids are.
Yeah.
And so when you get frustrated with them, you go, oh shit, that's just another part of them.
Exactly. And it's so funny you bring this up. I don't yet have kids, but I was speaking kind of astrology mentors, friends the other day who does have a 2-year-old daughter. And I said, so when she was born, did you look at her chart? And she said, yes, cautiously. And the reason she said cautiously is, sometimes you can know too much. But she wanted to know enough, to your point, to parent her well. And she gave me an example. It's funny that Taurus keeps entering the chat because here we go again. But she said that her daughter has Mars in Taurus, and Mars is our energy levels, our willpower, our drive. And having Mars in Taurus, not always, but that person is stubborn. They can also be a little lazy. They like to sleep. They're slow. They're not going to be the first one on the battlefield with a sword in hand. That's a Mars and Aries right there. And so she said, knowing that about my daughter has been a game changer because every morning when I go in to get her and I try waking her up, oh, good morning, darling, she refuses to get out of bed. She's like, I want to stay here all day. And she's very Taurus Mars. She's stubborn. She wants to stay. She's sleepy. She's slow. She doesn't really want to move. And so it's hilarious how just knowing that about your children, or I've also heard from moms who have a lot of water in their chart. So Cancer, Pisces, Scorpio, and they want a very calm, peaceful home because they're kind of these energetic, emotional sponges. And one of their children is a fire sign, is an Aries, is a Leo. And there's a total mismatch between those two energies until you grant the other permission to just be them. Okay, so mom is going to need some alone, quiet time. And I need to jump on my bed for 15 minutes because I have so much energy. So it's beautiful to know that about your children. And I love that you actually brought that up, that was part of your parenting.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I was always a curious mind, so I always needed to know. That's the Virgo in me, and
Yes.
my partner, I drive him crazy. He's also a Virgo, but
Oh boy.
yeah, it's really an interesting, relationship, I'll tell you. But I think what it is I'm the curious, go after, find the reasons why around things, where he's just a doer.
Ah,
Okay,
absolutely.
so yeah, so this is for the imbalance, where we do those imbalance things sometimes. But I mean, it's interesting just the same. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know about the rest of your chart or your partner's chart?
I would like to read a little bit more of his because there's times that
Okay.
he's probably schizophrenic too. I'm kidding. A little bit, a
Well,
little
we'll
bit.
pretend that was a joke.
I think what it is sometimes, because he's so up and down sometimes, I should look at his chart and find out what other
Absolutely.
signs he's got in there. Takes
You
him
know,
down that road.
what's really funny about that is that I actually had a client a few weeks ago where you mentioned up and down, schizophrenic, and I saw something in her chart related to her moon. And your moon represents your emotional nature and your emotional needs, kind of
Right.
your internal compass, if you will. And I saw that her moon was sitting opposite to the planet of Uranus. And Uranus is unexpected change, ups and downs, anarchy, rebellion, like pulling the rug from out under you. And I actually asked her, along with some other things in her chart, I said, do you ever feel a little bipolar? And I said it with love. I was just trying to get, the question, the
Do
answer.
I say this?
And yes. And she looked at me and she said, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder 3 years ago. I've always felt that way. And so I bring this up because this is something I've just recently started kind of investigating on my own. I don't have, all the data yet, all of the research, but even when it comes to mental health issues or quote unquote learning disabilities, I'm not saying that they don't exist, but what I am saying is you can often see them in the chart. For example, ADHD is really easy to spot in the chart. And so that's just another example of, I had mentioned earlier, fate versus free will. It really makes you think once you know all that I know. And this is one of those other things that makes you wonder, are these things disabilities? Or are they just the way we're built and we think differently? We're neurodivergent. We're just not the same. So it's quite an interesting box or can of worms to
What
open
if
up.
It would because there'd be two different signs how they are, how would determine whether they're ADHD or something like that, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting because I know with my son, he's so hyper and he was one of those kids he couldn't sit still on the couch. He was either over the back of it or on the arm of it or somewhere. And it was just his personality. He just couldn't
Yes.
do it, right? So or well, he could if I got mad at him.
Yes,
Right?
exactly.
But
Exactly.
but I also learned with him as a Pisces that he had to have the time to say, stop and sit. You need to
Yeah.
stop and sit. Stop swimming.
Stop swimming. Exactly. And you did a beautiful thing by parenting him that way because Pisces, if you think about what Pisces is, it's called mutable water. And
Right.
mutable means, free flowing. So, what does free flowing water need in order to flow in one direction? It needs structure. It needs a box or else it's going to be pooling everywhere and getting nowhere.
Exactly.
So that's really, really beautiful.
Well,
Well,
Yeah.
it helped.
Yeah. Well, you'll have to ask him.
Uh, yeah, because it's funny though, now that he's older in life, he's starting to adapt to taking those times of being by himself. And it's
Oh,
pulling him back into where in the spaces where he needs to be. So it's interesting. It's almost like it's gone full circle now, okay, where he's
yeah.
actually reading and he's slowing down in his life and paying attention to some of these things where he was
Mm,
so fast before just moving around. He didn't have
yeah.
give himself enough time to sit and, that's why I do that, right?
Ah,
Now he's
so
a
he's an
body.
elevated Pisces now.
Right. Yeah, well, he's a bodybuilder too. He's a bodybuilder and he whatever. So I mean,
Oh,
yeah, it
that's amazing.
has taught himself.
Oh, good for him. That's great. Now, it's funny, we've been mentioning a lot about our sun signs. I don't know if you know the sun sign, moon sign. We've
Right.
mentioned Mercury, Mars. But of course, for anyone listening, if you don't know, when we mention, oh, what's your zodiac sign? Oh, I'm a Leo, I'm a Capricorn, that is what's called your sun sign. Now, I was going to say, while we often know our sun sign, I actually think there's one planet in the chart that is, in my mind, the most important one of all to know, whether we are parents, whether we are just human beings, and that's the moon. The moon is something I focus on so deeply with my clients because I mentioned earlier your moon is your emotional nature and your emotional needs. And I had told you at the beginning in my story that when I learned about my moon sign, and granted, I had always really resonated with being a Leo sun. I was a competitive dancer, I was a singer, I was in theater, I loved to perform. So that checked out for me. It's not that I felt like it didn't get me. But when I learned about my moon sign and I realized, oh, Aquarius moon, that's why I'm a bit of the rebel who's always taking the unconventional path. Oh, that's why my job is astrologer. Oh, that's why I went vegan long before it was cool. I'm always doing the untraditional, unconventional thing, and no one gets me. Everyone thinks I'm kooky until 10 years later, and they're like, you were onto something. And I'm like, Aquarius moon. And so I bring that up just to say, when you know your moon sign, not only do you have a better grasp on your emotional nature, are you a really deep feeler? Do you need to be alone in times of crisis and conflict? But you also know your emotional needs
Right.
because your moon sign shows what you need in life to feel fulfilled, nourished, safe, satisfied, loved. And so while one moon sign might need constant communication, constant affirmation that, yes, I'm here for you, I love you. Another moon sign might need a little distance to feel safe in that relationship. And so I think moon sign is incredible to know if you're in a relationship, if you're a parent, but it's also really healing to get to know your own so that you can actually reparent yourself in the ways that you need to.
True. Can you explain a little bit about retrograde? Only because
This is a great
it's
question.
a great question, and I have a reason I'm asking you to. Is
Okay.
Kim has one son, and he's retrograde in a lot of his birth in his chart. And so when I remember when he was first born, and I looked at his chart and I saw the retrogrades, I thought, holy shit, does he have a retrograde in this stuff, right? And but
Yes.
then the more I read it, I realized that it showed him going down these other avenues because of that. So I rested on that sort of thing.
Yes.
But at the beginning, because I didn't understand retrograde, okay,
Yeah.
it put me in a sort of a flux where I was going, oh shit, I hope he's okay with that, right? And
That's so sweet. Absolutely. It's such a great question because, of course, we often talk about, oh, Mercury retrograde or Mars retrograde. For example, right now we have, so, tech issues and glitches and such. But in a birth chart, when you have a planet that is retrograde, it means that you do that planet unconventionally. So, for example, someone who has Venus retrograde, and Venus is the planet of love and relationships, it's also kind of your value system. They probably go about relationships in a different way. The typical structures aren't going to work for them. It might take them a little more time. It doesn't mean they're behind or they're wrong, but whatever planet you have retrograde, you just do it a little differently. So it can actually, what's beautiful about people that have retrograde planets in their birth chart is those planets often become their superpowers because they had to learn to do that thing different from everyone else on their own, and then it becomes a strength. Have you seen that with your son at all?
Yeah, he definitely does. Like he has things that he has struggled in life and then is now starting to master, right? So,
Wow.
yeah, because he's 35 now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Oh, wow. I need to see your brother's chart all of a sudden. But I hope that answers your question. Is that what you were looking for?
yeah,
Okay.
because I really think that people don't understand retrograde, and
Yes.
you've helped to explain it. You know how it can be, um, and if anybody's trying to get into astrology, then you've just answered another one of the quips that you have in the astrology thing, right? Because
Yeah.
it is a hard one to understand, especially when you're reading it in the chart too, the way the
Yes.
reading shows, right? So
Yes.
yeah.
So I'll say one last quick note on retrograde because there could be people listening that are saying, is that a Latin word? What are you even talking about right now? So when you have a planet that is retrograde, what it means is that from the vantage point of Earth, that planet has slowed down in its orbit and it has turned directions. So it starts going backwards. Now, I say from the vantage point of Earth because this doesn't actually happen astronomically. They're not actually going backwards. But based on the speed and the angles and all of those things, it appears that they do. Now, granted, even though that sounds very abstract and almost made up, oh, you just said it doesn't actually happen. Oh, it checks out. Trust me, it checks out. So, pretty much most of the planets, other than the sun and the moon, can go retrograde. And so we have, I mentioned earlier that we have Mercury retrograde right now, Mercury being thinking, technology, transportation. So anytime a planet is retrograde, the symbolism of that planet goes a little haywire for a little bit. So it can happen with all of the planets minus the sun and the moon, and we notice them.
well, and we can say, and I'll just leave this for people that are watching because we've had a little bit of unstable internet as you've been talking about with
And we have,
and it's like, hey, this makes sense now. Mercury's in retrograde. Of course it's going to be this way, right?
Exactly. Even earlier, I was having major Wi-Fi issues. And I said to my husband, remind me, why did I schedule this during Mercury retrograde? And he was like, that's a you problem, girl. I don't know. So far, so good though. It's worked out okay.
Yeah, it has. It's glitched a couple of times, but not too bad. And
Right.
I'll be very interested to see how you make out with, with delving into these things with all these different, bipolar and ADHD and
Yeah, that's
as a
interesting.
trailblazer, because I think
Yeah.
that is very interesting information.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
think it also would help people to parent different, teach different,
Yeah.
accept different things, right?
Right. And yeah,
Absolutely.
and as things happen in our lives, does that change us? Does it actually
Yeah.
change the star sign too? And it will change it?
Such, such a good question. So, yes, and changes. It is always your birth chart. However, we have two major things that I want to mention: transits and progressions. So, transits refer to the current planetary movements in the cosmos and how they are currently impacting your personal chart or my personal chart or the collective at large. So, those are called transits. So, that in and of itself helps us grow, helps us learn. There might be a challenging period where Saturn, who is all about responsibility and duty and authority and growing up, maturity, Saturn might be talking to your moon sign, your emotions, saying, work harder. You're not doing enough. And so
Right.
that can be a challenging time of learning and stepping into your authority. So that's transits. But then progressions is one of my favorite timing techniques because it is where transits are a physical phenomena. Progressions are a symbolic phenomena where we actually can symbolically track the movement of all of your planets around your birth chart, going in circles throughout your life. And what this does is it shows your soul's evolution through a lifetime. So, for example, this is one of my favorite timing techniques for this reason. Your moon sign changes zodiac signs every 2 to 2.5 years using this technique, progressions. And when you remember, that's what you need in life, what motivates you, what fulfills you. When your moon changes signs, suddenly you feel like you've changed your tune and you don't know why. Suddenly you need different things. Suddenly I just want to stay at home, or suddenly I want to never be at home. And you might wonder why. And I mentioned this, and you might be feeling like, I don't know if I actually changed that much in that period of time. Oh, no, 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 no. The number of clients that I have seen this be spot on with, I will give you a very quick example in my own life. So,
Mhm.
Sagittarius loves freedom, independence, travel, spontaneity, adventure, passion, spirituality.
Yeah.
In that period of time, can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. You
Okay.
It
just
just
kind
had
of
a
cut
glitch.
out.
Okay, great. So when my progressed moon was in Sagittarius for 2 to 2.5 years, I craved all those things: the independence, the freedom, the passion, the spirituality. I started traveling the world. I started my own business, doing breath work, doing health and wellness coaching. I also refused to have one full-time job. I wanted to piece things together because I wanted flexibility. I wanted spontaneity. So I was full on Sagittarius moon for those 2.5 years. And then I still remember when this happened. And at the time, I didn't even know this technique, which makes it even crazier looking back. It was just happening in my life. I woke up one day and I literally said to my husband, I don't want to be an entrepreneur anymore. I feel stifled by the freedom. It's too much. I said, I want a steady income. I want stable hours. And he looked at me like I was crazy because
Mm.
I, I'm not a Capricorn. I
Yep.
was never that kind of way. And I actually started interviewing for corporate jobs, which is something I truly never thought I would do. And 6 months into that process, I finally got the job. And I worked at this corporate job for about 2 years. And at that point, my progressed moon shifted. Again, I didn't know about this at the time, just to put it in there. And at that point, when my progressed moon left Capricorn, which loves the stability, which loves the ambition, which can love the corporate life, and it moved into Aquarius, which is my natal moon. And Aquarius loves innovation. It also loves freedom. It loves rebelling against traditions. I quit my job. I put all of my belongings into a storage unit, and my husband and I booked a one-way plane ticket to Thailand with no plans, just our backpacks, a dream, and ourselves.
Cool.
And that kicked off the journey. So that is just showing how going from Sagittarius to Capricorn to Aquarius, it ruled my life. It changed everything for me. So to go back, just to answer your question, our birth chart stays the same, but we do not. We go through so many changes, so many evolutions that are scheduled long before we know they're there. So it's really quite beautiful.
That is amazing.
That's a good answer. That's good for people
Awesome.
to know too. Another reason why we should have our charts read more often if we don't want to study it ourselves. But another reason why we should probably get them done every couple of years or so at least. So we stay on momentum of how we should be and on our balance sort of thing. Because we do run off that balance, right? Where we're going, oh my God, what am I doing? I'm making mistakes. I'm doing this. What the hell? Right?
So that's why, absolutely. So on my website, just if anyone's interested, I do have a year ahead forecast reading.
Nice.
So even if you know your birth chart like the back of your hand, we can all have the have someone else look at your own stuff sometime. So it's really, really helpful just when it comes to the practicality of planning your life. You know, what kind of phase are you in? What nourishes you? Are you in kind of a hustling, building up phase? Are you trying to kind of slow down? We can see all of that and so much more.
Perfect. Well, which gives me the perfect segue into how can people find you?
Absolutely. So that was so good. Thank you. So people can find me on my website, which is devonrochelle.com. I'm assuming you might have that in the show notes. Might be hard to spell. So there's the website where you can read about all my services, you can book, but I also have my Instagram where I am on there multiple times a day, and that is just at It's Devon Rochelle. And you can find me on YouTube at the same name. And so I had also mentioned to you too that I have my podcast, which is called It's All Magic.
Okay.
And I post infrequently at best, but when I post, I hope they're good. So you can find those, of course, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, etc. But yeah, I hope if anyone is interested in even chatting with me, please feel free to just DM me, email me, message me. I would love to talk to you and serve and assist in any way I can.
Wonderful.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you. And we will, I know we talked about this before we got on air, but we will try to get you on a live. So if everybody's watching this, we're going to try to do that probably in the new year coming up. And then you'll be able to ask Devon all kinds of questions about your signs and things you want to know because you're just a wealth of information.
Boy, are you ever.
Thank you.
Been a lot of fun having you on.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Thank you. Thank you both so much for having me. This was a blast. I feel like this hour flew by. So I would gladly do this again, the live, whatever. Just call my name and I'll be there.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Devon.
And so if you had a final thought to leave with everybody, what would it be?
I would say you were made to be you and no one but you, and you're perfectly on time.
Nice.
That's it.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you so much. And yes,
Thank you.
we just love this. So thank you so much.
We'll be back at you.
Yeah, we will. And everybody else, we'll see you on the next one.
You bet.